I spent 30 years saving for this. So why am I terrified to touch a single cent of it? David said that to me 3 years into the retirement he used to dream about. He's 58. He did everything they tell you to do. Maxed the 401k, paid off the house, never carried a balance. He's got $640,000 sitting in his accounts and a mortgage statement that says zero, and he's scared to spend $40 on dinner. Here's the part nobody warns you about. The most dangerous years of your financial life aren't your 20s. They're the 5 years right after you stop working. Research out of the American College of Financial Services found that the first decade of retirement decides roughly 77% of whether your money lasts the whole way. Not the 30 years you spent saving, the first 10 years of spending. You think the hard part was building the nest egg. It wasn't. The hard part is what David is living right now, coming down off the mountain without falling. Because here's the truth almost nobody says out loud. More climbers die on the way down than on the way up. You spend 30 years climbing to your number, and then, somewhere around 55, you start the descent. The skills that got you to the summit, they're not the skills that get you home alive. So if you're anywhere between 53 and 63, listen close. There are 5 mistakes waiting for you on the way down. I'm going to walk you through everyone, what it actually costs in real dollars, and the single move that diffuses it. And stay with me till the 5th. It's the one almost nobody sees coming because it's not powered by greed or bad luck. It's powered by the exact discipline that got you to the top. Let's get into it. Here's the first wrong turn, and it's the most common one out there. The day you turn 62, Social Security opens the door and says, "Come on in, start collecting." And most people walk right through it. David did. He was nervous. The market had a rough month, the headlines were ugly, and grabbing that check felt like taking the bird in the hand. Here's what that decision actually costs. Social Security pays you more for every year you wait, all the way to 70. We're talking about an 8% raise guaranteed for each year you hold off past your full retirement age. Stack it up, and claiming at 62 versus claiming at 70 is the difference between about $1,800 a month and roughly $3,370 a month. Same person, same work history, just a different start date, and that gap doesn't go away. It's every single month for the rest of your life, adjusted for inflation every year. If you're married, it gets bigger because when one of you passes, the survivor keeps the larger check. Claim early, and you just shrank your spouse's paycheck for the years they'll need it most. Now you're probably thinking, but what if I don't make it to 80? I'd be leaving money on the table. I get it. That's the exact fear David had. And for some folks, real health issues, not much time left. Claiming early is the right call. But for most people in decent health, that fear is the tail wagging the dog. You're insuring against a long life, not a short one. Running out of money at 88 is the problem. Dying at 79 with a little less in the bank is not. Susan, same age as David, looked at the same scary headlines. She didn't flinch. She lived off her savings for a few years and let that Social Security number keep climbing. Move number 1, don't claim out of fear. If your health and your savings allow it, build a bridge with your own money and let the check grow. It's the highest guaranteed return you'll find anywhere. But the check you claim early is the smallest of these 5 mistakes. The next one doesn't show up as a benefit. It shows up as a bill, and it lands the day your work coverage ends. Quick question. When does Medicare kick in? Age 65. Not a day sooner. So if you retire at 58 like David did, you've got a 7-year hole to cover. And that hole has a price tag most people never see coming. Here's the mechanism. The day David's employer health plan ended, he had to buy his own coverage on the open market. For a couple in their late 50s, that runs anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 a month. Before a single copay, before a deductible, before one prescription. And starting in 2026, those enhanced subsidies that used to soften the blow expired. The subsidy cliff is back. Earn $1 over the threshold and you pay full freight. Let's do the math, nice and slow. Call it $1,500 a month per person, 2 people, 12 months, 7 years until Medicare. That's $250,000, gone, on insurance alone. And that's the conservative number. Fidelity estimates the average 65-year-old will spend around $172,500 on healthcare across retirement. And that's after Medicare starts. The pre-Medicare gap is the part nobody puts on the brochure. Here's the kicker. That bill doesn't show up on any retirement calculator. It shows up the day your work coverage ends, and the only thing you've got to throw at it is the nest egg you needed for everything else. Susan saw this coming a mile away. Years before she retired, she'd been quietly funding a health savings account, an HSA, and investing it, not spending it. Pre-tax going in, tax-free growth, tax-free coming out for medical costs, triple tax-free. By the time she retired, she had a dedicated war chest just for the gap, and she kept her taxable income managed carefully, so she stayed on the right side of that subsidy cliff. Move number 2. If you've got a high-deductible plan, fund an HSA and invest it. Don't treat it like a checking account for copays. And if you're retiring before 65, plan your income on purpose to keep those premiums down. Health insurance, at least, you can budget for. The next mistake you can't even see until the tax bill arrives years later with your name on it. Real quick, if any of this is landing, do me a favor and hit subscribe. The algorithm forgets you exist unless you tell it not to, and this channel runs the numbers nobody else will run for you. No hype, no shame, just the math. Okay, back to it. This one's sneaky because it's a mistake you make by doing everything right for 30 years. You were told to max out the 401k, defer the taxes, lower your bill today, and you did, like a champ. David put every dollar he could into his traditional 401k and patted himself on the back every April. Here's the problem. That money was never tax-free. It was taxed later, and later has a name. It's called required minimum distributions, and at 73, Uncle Sam shows up to collect. Here's how the torpedo works. At 73, the IRS forces you to start pulling money out of that account, whether you need it or not. Those forced withdrawals get stacked on top of your other income. That can push you into a higher bracket. It can make more of your Social Security taxable, and it can trigger something called IRMA, a surcharge that quietly jacks up your Medicare premiums for the year. So David, who thought he'd be in a low bracket in retirement, ends up watching a chunk of his tax-deferred win get clawed right back. The bill he kicked down the road for 30 years finally caught up with him, with interest. Now here's what Susan did differently, and it's the move hiding in plain sight. Between the year she retired and the year RMDs kick in, there's a window. Your work income's gone, but the forced withdrawals haven't started. For a lot of people, that's the lowest income stretch of their adult life. Susan used those years to do Roth conversions, moving money from the traditional account into a Roth, paying tax now while her bracket was rock bottom so that money would grow and come out tax-free forever. No RMDs, no torpedo. Move number 3, those quiet years between retirement and 73 aren't dead time. They're the most valuable tax planning window you'll ever get. Use them. Taxes at least you can plan around. But the next mistake hangs on something you don't control at all. Timing. And bad timing can break a perfectly good plan in about 3 years flat. Let me ask you something. 2 people retire with the exact same $1 million. They take out the same amount every year. Over 30 years, they earn the exact same average return. One of them cruises through comfortably. The other goes broke. How? Same money, same withdrawals, same average. The only difference is the order the returns showed up in. This is the one the pros lose sleep over. It's called sequence of returns risk, and it's the quiet killer of early retirements. Here's why it's so brutal. While you were working and saving, a market crash was actually good news. You were buying shares on sale, and you had a paycheck, so you never had to sell. But the day you retire, that flips completely. Now you're selling shares to live. And if the market drops in your first few years, every withdrawal is selling at a loss. Those shares are gone. They never get to recover. The hole just gets deeper. Picture David. He retires feeling great, fully invested in stocks like he's been for 30 years. Year 1, the market drops 20%. His $640,000 becomes $510,000 overnight. But he still needs to pull his living expenses. So he sells into the decline. Year 2, another rough stretch. Now the snowball's rolling downhill, and no average return on a spreadsheet can save him because the damage got locked in early. Susan retired the same year, into the same ugly market. But she didn't panic, and she didn't have to sell a single share at the bottom. Why? Because before she ever retired, she'd carved out 2 full years of living expenses in plain cash. When the market tanked, she just lived off the cash and let her investments heal. By the time she had to touch them again, they'd recovered. Same market. Completely different ending. Move number 4, build a cash buffer, 2 years of expenses. Before you retire, not after. And in a down year, tighten the belt a little. Flexibility is armor. Markets take your money fast, and they usually give it back eventually. But the last mistake takes it slow. And the cruelest part? You do it to yourself, with the very habits that made you a saver in the first place. This is the one nobody sees coming, and it's the reason I told you to stay till the end. Remember David, at the very start? I'm terrified to touch a single cent of it. That's not a quirk. That's the 5th mistake, and it's the most expensive of them all, even though it never shows up as a loss on any statement. Here's the mechanism, and it's pure psychology. For 30 years, David trained one muscle: save. Spend less than you make. Never touch the principal. Watch the number go up. That instinct made him rich. It became his identity. And then he retired, and the game changed overnight. Now the job isn't to grow the number, it's to spend it down, on purpose, without running out. But David's brain never got the memo, so he does what savers do. He white-knuckles it. He skips the trip to see the grandkids because flights got expensive. He drives the 15-year-old car. He sits on $640,000 and lives like he's broke. And the years roll by, the good years, the healthy years. The ones where he could still hike, still travel, still pick up the grandkids without his back going out. Economists have a cold name for this. Die with Zero research shows most disciplined savers pass away with the large majority of their money unspent. Think about what that actually means. It's not a financial win. It's years of your one life, traded for a number you never spent. The very thing you sacrificed for, sitting untouched while the clock ran out. Susan refused to live that way. She did something simple but radical. She built herself a paycheck. She set up an automatic monthly transfer from her investments into her checking account. A real planned number she was allowed to spend, guilt-free. She turned, "Can I afford this?" into, "This is already budgeted." She gave herself permission in writing. Move number 5, build a retirement paycheck. A plan to spend, not just a plan to save. Because a nest egg you're too scared to crack isn't wealth. It's just a high score nobody gets to enjoy. Now here's the thing that ties all 5 of these together. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Claiming Social Security early to lock in certainty. Ignoring the healthcare gap because you were staring at the balance. Deferring every tax because lower now felt smart. Staying all in on stocks because that's what built the pile. And refusing to spend a dime because saving is who you are. Every single one of those is the same mistake wearing a different mask. You spent 30 years as a climber, and climbing rewards a very specific set of instincts. Save hard, never sell, defer everything, lock in safety, keep grinding. Those instincts are exactly why you've got a nest egg at all. But retirement isn't the climb, it's the descent. And the descent rewards the opposite of almost everything that got you up there. The discipline that built the $640,000 is the same discipline that quietly drains it, or freezes it solid. The summit was never the goal. Getting back down with it was. So what happened to David? He looked down, finally, and he saw the fall coming, so he made the turns. He walked back his early Social Security plan where he could and rebuilt it around waiting. He set up an HSA to cover the gap. He started Roth conversions in those quiet low-tax years. He carved out his 2-year cash buffer so the next downturn couldn't gut him. And the hardest one of all, he built himself a paycheck, and he booked the flight to see the grandkids. He's not climbing anymore. He's descending on purpose, with a rope and a plan. Here's what I need you to hear. Run these 5 before you retire, not after. On the way down, after is almost always too late. The mistake's already made by the time you feel it. You did the hard part. You climbed the mountain most people never finish. Don't lose it all in the last mile down, because wealth after 50 was never about the climb.